All right, with us on the show today, we got Gage Bohannon on the show and on YouTube with us today. So, Gage, what's up, man?
Oh, not a lot, man. Been hard at it this morning. Like I was telling you there a little bit earlier, I had to go and help a buddy drag a buck out, so I haven't got too much work done today at all.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat because I was telling you before the recording, I tried doing something that has been giving us problems on the show. So I set up the cameras again so that, I can make us look a little better. And it's messing with us already. So uh, instead of doing a lot of work this morning, I was jacking with that, trying to get ready for Mr. Gage. So we'll see how that goes. You're our first one since I've had camera issues, but um,
I will make it work either way.
yeah. So today's show is going to be a Tales of the Chase episode about a deer, because people will see the pictures, and if they haven't already, and they'll hear the story, this is a big deer, and but before we get into that too much, I want you to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, where you're from, what you do. Um, and I promised myself we'll try to do as little coyote talking in this episode as we can. But, for anybody listening does know Gage at all, Gage is an awesome coyote hunter as well. And that's actually how I knew you, was from coyote stuff. So
Yes, sir.
anyway, introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
So my name's Gage Bohannon. I live in a really small town called Eminence, Kentucky, and own a small diesel shop right outside of that town. I've literally lived in the same place my entire life, so it's kind of just that whole small town, everybody knows everybody thing. And uh, just as far as about me goes, man, about the only passion I really, really have is hunting, whether it be coyotes, deer, whatever. I take my bow hunting very seriously and coyote calling very seriously. But I mean, I hunt everything, but those are definitely my favorite things.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. It's deer and coyotes for us and a little bit of elk, a couple weeks out of the year, but, uh, yeah, it's pretty cool. So do you specialize in any sort of diesel? Do you work on all of them, or do you specialize on
No, your
Duramax,
big
anything?
three.
Yeah.
Yeah, your big three mainly. Your Ford, Chevy, Dodge. Just if it's a Duramax, Power Stroke, or Cummins motor, I mean, we'll do about anything you need. But we build transmissions, so
Okay.
do a lot of whether it's just stock rebuild or performance builds, things like that. We do a whole lot of, especially the Dodges, like the 48 REs and 68s and stuff like that. We do a ton of those. So
Yeah. I was going
yes,
to say you
sir.
probably get a lot of Dodges in there then because their transmissions suck, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Believe me, I own one. I own actually every brand, but yeah, they do. There's no denying it whatsoever.
Yeah. My, not my claim to fame, but I guess my depressing story is I had an '07 LBZ Duramax,
Yeah,
but the classic version. And I
yep.
loved that truck. It had a EFI Live 5-stage in it, and certain things. I didn't go too crazy with it, but I love that truck. And when you have kids, you make sacrifices. So my daughter became of driving age, and I sold my baby so that she could
Yep.
get by. We bought her a car, and then I got a half ton. And I just don't feel like as much of a man as I used to without my Duramax. But I've gotten over it. I like my little truck. It's had a dead deer in the back of it a few times now, so it's been broke in, but
That's
just
what
not the same.
matters. Yes,
All right, man.
sir.
So we got an awesome Tales of the Chase story today. You killed a buck in Kentucky, called
Yes, sir.
named Mega Moose, which by the way is an awesome name. I like
Thank
to
you.
nickname my deer. Sounds like you do too, apparently.
Yeah, we name all of them, but that name actually came about kind of funny. I got some close buddies of mine that instantly, when they knew about the deer last year, and obviously going into this year, but we called him just when I sent him the first pictures of him, my buddies Jake and Luke. I said, "Man, this deer is just a mega. Like he is a mega giant." And we just kept saying mega over and over. I mean, because it was kind of one of those like this frame is stupid, yada yada. And then the landowner actually called him Bullwinkle. So I was like, "Man, Mega Moose it is." It just kind of
That's
stuck, and
hilarious.
that's what
Yeah.
that's what went on. So
I'm not very creative, so I actually have nicknamed most of all my deer after Mortal Kombat characters.
okay, I like that.
Because Mortal Kombat, they got badass names, most of them, and
Yep.
if I can't think of a cool name, I'll just give it a name off Mortal Kombat. So like both these deer, right here are Scorpion and Noob Sabat, which are Mortal Kombat characters. But
There you go.
I think one deer in my studio that has got a name that's not a character, because I'm not creative enough to give them names. So, but I like, if you can think of something cool, it's better than, something generic. So I liked Mega Moose. That was a good one.
Well, like, and a lot of my deer will come down to like either location or something about, kind of that type thing. Like the deer that's behind me right here, he didn't have a name. It was just kind of a random. This is actually the last gun deer that I killed. It was 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually shot him with a 50 cal, so we called him the Barrett
Oh,
Buck.
oh, yeah.
And
It's amazing you still got
that's how
a
he got
head.
his name. Yeah. But I shot a few deer that year with it. That was the first year I had that gun, and just was actually looking forward to gun season for that reason. But and then I've got like one, my first real big deer that I killed in 2015. He had a super white rack, like all the tines just looked like they were bleached white. And so I called him Walter because Walter White, Breaking Bad,
Mm-hmm.
was big at that time, so
Yep.
it was kind of the thing. And then I've got one that's 8.5 years old, called him Monarch, just because he hung around the farm forever and stuff. And,
Yep.
so this one, like I say, that's just how that name came about. So there's always something. I'll name other deer like after characters that my kids really like at the time. Every
Yep.
once in a while, you catch me throwing like a rapper's name on one or something like that, but that's
I
about
like
it.
it. Yeah, I've only got a few that I've given, like, the deer actually that is our logo. Um,
Yeah.
that kind of started the podcast. His nickname was Basket Case because he was a really
Oh yeah.
beautiful 8-pointer. And I just, like, it hit me. That's the name I gave him. And then there was one other deer. He's like a 10-year-old monarch of a deer that by the time he was 10 years old, all he had was 2 main beams and G1s.
Yeah.
That's all he had left. And so he looked like a
Yep.
devil, like a like the devil horn. So I called him
Yeah.
Evil Eddie. And
I like that.
that was the only deer I've given any sort of kind of cool nickname to. The rest of them are just Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Reptile, all these Mortal Kombat characters. But I do like the
Oh yeah.
theme, at least. At least I thought of something where I don't think there's many other people naming deer after you
No.
know characters from Mortal Kombat. So at least I'm cool that way. But
Oh yeah,
Micah
for sure.
Micah's the exact opposite. He doesn't like the nickname deer, so we like to fight about it on our show all the time. That you know, the cool. So I've got another one in my column that Gage Bohannon likes to nickname his deer. So I win, you lose.
I do, man. I've always done it. Walter was actually, I guess, the first deer that I ever named. It was the first deer that I like put forth effort into just hunting that deer,
Mm-hmm.
and because at that time, to be honest with you, uh, I had my best friend Andy. We would literally go, and I mean, September was just slaughter does, man. Like it was just, we would go in and hang like double sets and just
Right.
shoot deer. First 2 does walk by, we're catching arrows. And to be honest with you, I had a lot more fun hunting then than I do now, especially seasons like this and how tough this one was. But
Yep.
it's definitely not as rewarding, but I definitely had a lot more fun doing it. And so once Walter rolled around, and I kind of took that hunt pretty serious and ended up getting him killed, had a lot of history with that deer. And he ended up being a 176-inch deer. He's a giant, man. He's just real massive, super tight rack. He's only like 15, 16 inches wide.
Yep.
Just tank. But I've been very fortunate as far as deer hunting goes. Been blessed, and yeah, so I'm a big deer namer, man. All of them that
Yeah.
I care about, they're gonna catch some
I like
names.
it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. First off, I enjoy doing it. And then, when you're hunting with people, like in my case, me and my brother-in-law were hunting together. And so all
Yeah.
summer long, we're talking about these deer we're getting on camera.
Yep.
And, you'd find yourself being like, that big 10 with the kicker. Instead
And
of
then you
just
have to say
saying,
that every single time.
there you go. Instead of just saying Scorpion. If both
Yep.
Scorpion is the
Exactly.
big 10 with the kicker, it makes it so much
Yep.
easier to talk about these deer. So we started nicknaming deer about that time we started hunting kind of
Oh
together.
yeah.
And it just made it easier. And ever since then, I've been doing it. But Micah's like, I don't know, that big one right over there. And, he's nicknamed a few of them. He's got one deer that's got 3 legs that he calls a tripod or something like that. Can't remember what he calls them. But
I see he can't count himself out then. He named one.
yeah, he's what he talks out of both sides of his mouth. This is what I deal with on a daily basis with our show, man. I'll tell you. You know, he tells he doesn't do it, but then he's naming deer. He's so untrustworthy. I can't trust the guy. You know, it's easy to talk shit when they're not here. But
That's right. That's right.
so, Mike, if you're listening, I love you, buddy. I'm sorry. But so let's talk about this deer. So before we get into the story behind, you know, the years that you know this deer, let's talk about the property itself. Kind of paint a picture to the listener of, you know, what are you hunting in this situation? You know, no addresses, no pinpoints here. Don't give away any you know, nothing obvious that will tell you where you're hunting, but kind of paint a picture of the property itself so that the listener can kind of get an idea of what you're hunting.
So the land around here, I mean, everything I call them finger holler farms. We're
Mm-hmm.
big ag ground here close to the house. And so all of our stuff is just, small pockets of woods, big, thick draws. It makes it actually amazing. We talk about coyote hunting. It makes it amazing for coyote hunting, but I've never been just a big woods guy. I've always liked targeting farms that, you know, not because it was just so much easier to pinpoint where these deer are, because the bad thing on these deer is they travel a lot. You know, rut hits and your deer might end up 8 miles up the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it a little bit tough there. But, you know, as far as big woods, you know, there's good and bad to all of it, but this is just my style of hunting since I've been a kid, and it's just what I've always been drawn to. So the farm that the deer actually came off of, it's about a 190-acre farm. Nothing out of this world huge. Definitely, the deer, unfortunately for me, was a traveler. Made
That
some
sucks.
really big moves.
Yep.
Um, and the farm, to be honest with you, out of that 190 acres, maybe has, man, if it has 30 acres of woods on it, it would be probably stretching it.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was actually fortunate enough, the farm next door as well, I could bow hunt it. And so that made it a little bit easier. But that farm was probably 300 acres and probably had 10 acres of woods on it. So
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. But unfortunately for me, that's what he liked to live in. I mean, all summer, man, this deer, if he could find two bushes in the middle of a bean field to bed down by, he would do it. And you know, you always hear about, I know where his bedroom's at. I know exactly where he's, man, I thought I did. And then I would literally see this deer. He would bed here one night, and then the next night, I mean, he was just laying down wherever he wanted to. The deer
Yep.
had 60 beds on 40 acres, you know. So he was hard to pinpoint and kind of make those aggressive moves on, you'd say. So
Right.
it just big open country, man, trying to,
Well, and
you're almost a step behind him all the time.
it makes it harder, honestly. It sounds like a lot of what we got where we live here. The farm that he died on, Scorpion there,
Yeah.
sounds a lot like it. 200-acre farm, maybe 5 acres of timber on the entire thing. Ditches,
Yep.
draws, some thick, you know, nasty crap, but not really trees. And it makes it hard to hunt them if they're bedded in there. What are you going to do? Walk in there? You know, it's a wide open field you're trying to get into in the afternoon or in the mornings.
Exactly.
You know, in the mornings you're walking in the dark wondering, I hope I don't walk right on top of his ass before he goes to bed,
Yep.
because he could be out anywhere out here, and there's only one way for me to get in there. So while it is nice because, yeah, there's only, let's say, 2 pockets of timber on this farm that totals 30 acres. Yeah, I know they're probably going to be in there somewhere, but how do I get there? How I have no cover to make it here. I have no way to really keep myself from being noticed either. If it's easy for
Yep.
me to find them, it's easy for them to find me is just as much. So, which it's nice, but yeah, at the same time, it's no easier than hunting a big wood buck. I mean, you still have the same challenges, if not more, because there's only so many places for you to hide as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. I I know I cheated. So if anybody hasn't listened to the show on the Fox Pro podcast with John Collins and Gage was on the show with John. By the time this show comes out with us, it'll be a couple weeks ago. But So I cheated. I listened to that show because I listened to the Fox Pro podcast. If you don't, you should go listen to John on the Fox Pro podcast. But so I know the story for the most part, but you had several years of history with this deer, obviously. So let's just
Yeah.
kind of talk about the first time you knew he existed, and then kind of start the story from there.
So speaking of coyote hunting, I actually picked the farm up for a coyote permission. Is how the farm came about. And so this would have been not last year, but the year before. So it's a 3-year history with the deer.
Mm-hmm.
Knew of the deer, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna go hunt that deer. Hey, this is the one. Whatever. It was just, oh wow, that's a big wide frame deer. He's gorgeous. But at that time, he was just a super nice 4-year old. Saw him on a coyote stand. That was kind of the end of it. And I'm not one of those people either that, once you pick that farm up for coyote permission, I'm not burning you down trying to deer hunt it, because then, you can run yourself off as much as you can help yourself.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
I didn't want to ask anything about it, whatever. But take to the following year, which last year, it was like March something. I can't remember what it was, but I actually went in to make a daytime coyote stand on this farm, and got in, and this creek bottom was just loaded with turkeys. I mean, birds from one end of it to the other, and I was like, man, holy crap, it's a ton of birds, and relatively close to my house, so it was kind of a win-win. I was like, man, if I could pick this up for turkey hunting permission, this would be great.
Right.
And ended up getting it for turkey hunting permission. Killed a bird opening morning. It was awesome. And then towards the end of the season, one of my good friends, Andy, hadn't killed a bird, so I was like, man, let's go. And I said, I've got a place we can go and try to get you a bird. There's been plenty of them. I said, they might not call very good this time of year, but we'll give it a try. Last day of season, we're working a bird, and a bachelor group of like 4 or 5 bucks pops out. He's the last deer in the line, and that's like first week of May for Kentucky, and he's
Yeah.
already out past his ears and like balled up heavy. And I
So
was
this would
like,
be
man,
heading into like last season, his new
yeah,
rack.
last
Yeah.
season, yeah,
Yeah.
yep. And I was like, dude, that deer's gonna be a giant. Like, he's got a ton of potential. And so I was scared to death, man. Like, more nervous than I think I've ever been asking for permission. And finally, about a month or so goes by, and I'm like, I finally just come out and ask him, like, hey, can I, bow hunt your property, or, whatever. I would be willing to, do a lease, whatever needed to be. Ended up working out real good just off of the relationship we had built off coyote hunting,
Uh-huh.
and got in there and hung some cameras. And the first pictures that I got of him that year, it was like July 10th, I want to say, but the first like mega pictures of that year, so this was last season, were August 24th. And man, the pictures then were great. He was probably a mainframe 70, just super nice clean 10,
Mm-hmm.
but his frame, man, the frame is what got it. Like, it was nuts just how big his frame actually was. And so fast
And by
forward
that
into that
time,
season.
they're still in velvet. I'm
Oh
assuming
yeah,
in Kentucky
yeah,
they're still in velvet at that
yeah,
time
for
too.
sure.
And you're just like, oh my, velvet pictures. I always try to be a little cautious, right? Because you can get super
Yeah.
excited, and then they go hard horned, and things change. But
Oh
uh,
yeah.
at that time though, you see a deer like him, and you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
this is a giant, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that year I had kind of made a promise to myself to like have a good fun season and everything. And to be honest with you, last year I had a ton of like bucks that I would have shot. And so opening day that year, he had vanished. Like, that August 24th picture was the last picture that I got of him, all the way up until Kentucky's early muzzleloader season, which I think last year fell on like the 22nd of October.
Yep.
I actually tagged out opening day of bow season last year. I shot a buck I called the club buck. He was just a gnarly old 6-year-old that was running everything off. Ended up killing him behind my house. He was a really cool deer, not a high scoring
And
deer, but
for you guys,
uh,
is that September 1st? Like
no, it was
in
like
Kentucky?
last year. I think it fell on the third or fourth.
Okay.
Um,
So
ours
what
is
is it,
just
like the
always the
first
first
Saturday or
Saturday.
whatever? Okay.
Yep,
Gotcha.
yep,
Yeah,
first
because that's
Saturday.
the difference between Kentucky and Missouri on the deer, because there's so many velvet bucks in Kentucky that get killed every
Yeah,
year. It's
yep,
so cool. in Missouri, our season opens at September 15th every year.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what day of the week it falls on. And so by then, most bucks have lost their velvet. Now there's a
Yeah.
few that you can, catch that, you'll get lucky enough and kill one. But in
Right.
Missouri, like I don't ever expect to kill a velvet buck most likely in my life,
Yeah.
just because you'd have to get it in the first 2 days, and then it would have to just be a late shedder or shedder,
Yeah.
shedder of its velvet. And so in Kentucky, I think that's one of the cooler things is the season opens up pretty much the beginning of September. So there's so many
Yeah.
beautiful velvet bucks that, hit the ground, and, one
Yeah.
can
I
dream,
mean,
but it's not going to happen.
yeah. Oh no, and I do love like that whole velvet hunt, man, and to be honest with you, as far as like getting in and getting a pattern set up on just a really mature deer, that's the time. I mean, you got that before that testosterone ramps up and that brain activity starts acting up again. I mean, I'm not saying that they're stupid because in this deer's case this year, definitely not. He didn't come out of velvet till like September, I think it was 14th or 16th of this year is when he
Oh,
came out of
dang.
velvet. Yeah, he held it late, which was
Hmm.
not like him. And so it was, that was one of those deer that might have worked out for you, but most of our deer, you're looking at that first week of September at latest, most of the time that September 10th through 12th is kind of when you'll start seeing them drop out.
Yeah.
And then that's when honestly a lot of your bigger deer, that pattern changes drastically. And I mean, so once you finally catch up and kind of get on that pattern, then it throws you right back off of it again. And I don't know why it always seems like this, but a lot of my farms just, uh, I've got buddies that October's great for them. And man, I don't think I've ever killed a buck in the month of October.
Oh,
I
really?
don't believe that. Yeah, I don't
So
think I've ever done it.
yours are the ones where they disappear for that time, which
Yeah,
happens. I've got the farm that Noob died off of right here.
yeah,
Speaking of velvet, the year before I killed him, I got so many cool trail cam pictures of him shedding, getting rid of his velvet, and he
yep,
was a deer I was going to let walk that year.
yeah,
And but that farm that they're on, right there around October, 1st, right after they've gone hard horned and things are starting to kind of maybe change a little bit, they just poof. All of them just
yep,
disappear for 4 weeks, and then the rut kind of starts picking up, and it's like a snap of a finger, and they show back up. So who
yep.
knows why, but yours, you got one like that where October hits and you're like, oh shit, they're all gonna go die
Yeah.
somewhere.
And man, with our Kentucky having that early muzzleloader season too, it always kind of gets you nervous about that because,
Yeah,
like I say, he hung around a little later this year than I've had deer in the past. But and don't get me wrong, I had like shooter deer in October. It wasn't like I had a couple good encounters in October, but just not him.
right.
And for the whole month of October this year, that deer I only had him for 3 days the whole month.
Damn.
So, I mean, he would literally stay gone that long. So, that whole time you're wondering if you bumped him or pushed him or if
Yeah.
somebody's already killed him, things like that.
So
But
going back to last year, you
yeah,
you got the permission.
yep,
Well, you saw him the last day of turkey season. You knew he was going to be big. You finally worked up the courage, which, yeah, I can only imagine. Like, I can picture you like kicking rocks on the ground with your head down, like, like asking that permission is always scary, because
it is,
cow
man.
permission is different than deer permission. It's a different world.
Very much so.
And so you got the permission. You started hanging cameras. You got that August picture of them that you're just like, damn. So
Yeah.
last
And
year, but you killed that buck in September.
yep,
So
he had kind of
could
ghosted there. And so I
okay.
decided to hunt that other deer.
So what is the tag situation in Kentucky? Do you once you killed that buck, were you done, or what?
Yep.
What could you have done from there?
No, one buck state. So I
Okay.
was done. But like I was talking about, kind of that promise to have a fun season thing. I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to stick by that last year, just because years past I've taken it way too seriously, much like this year. So I, literally 1 year and broke my promise. But I I said, man, even told buddies, I was like, the first mature deer that walks by me, I said, I'm shooting it. I said, I'm not playing this one deer stuff again. And I was talked to big game last year, and so ended up killing that deer opening night. Was in the blind for a whopping 3 hours, 3.5 hours, something like that. Got him killed. And like I say, this deer still hasn't showed up at that point. So like all of
Uh-huh.
September, we're talking, still gone. Figured out why this year, but anyway, early muzzleloader rode around, and it was the first opportunity my wife had to go hunt. And so I was like, "Hey, this big deer's still in this area. We're gonna go hunt him." Well, as luck would have it, literally that morning he came back to the farm.
Uh,
And so I was like, we have a shot at this, like I'm pumped up. Like, man, she could actually kill this deer. And mind you, like he was still a 170-inch deer last year, like absolute tank of a deer.
beast. Yeah.
And yeah, straight up. And so I was like, she could have a chance at killing this deer. We got set up, and cell cams, you can talk about like the biggest tool and the biggest just, let the wind out of your sails thing there is. We literally got set up in an area that I thought he would be coming through, and weren't there for a half hour, 45 minutes, and get a picture. And this deer is legitimately like 3/4 of a mile up the creek. Like, no chance of him coming back by. And so I was like, all right, well, I doubt we'll see him this morning, but we tried. And our early muzzleloader season's only a weekend long. So we hunted both days. Saw one decent buck that, looking back, probably should have let her shoot, but didn't happen. Gun season was kind of a blur. We had just had our third baby last year, and
Yep.
so it was, how it is, man, trying to set up to get my mom to come out and watch kids while we're trying to get up, get out, especially gun season. Your time changed, so you're trying to get up super early, get out there. Didn't really work out. And to be honest with you, he wasn't showing up that frequently anyway. It's kind of one of those new properties, and thought I maybe knew a little bit more than I actually did know about it and what the deer were doing and stuff. So season went by, and get a picture of him at last light on the last day of gun season, and was like, well, he made it through gun season.
He's
We got
alive.
that going. Yep, he's alive.
So what's your
And
guys'
so,
so you got early muzzleloader, which is a
yep,
2-day season, is that right?
yep, 2 day.
So it's kind of like our youth season here in Missouri. We got a
And
2-day
we have
youth
one of those
season.
too.
Oh, do you? Okay. So you got
Yeah,
like double dip there. And then
it's
do you
back
have
to
like
back weekend.
do you have a straight up rifle season too?
Yeah, and ours is it's 3 weeks, 4 weekends, I guess the way it actually falls. So like you get
Okay.
it kind of like ours actually just came in last Saturday, November 9th was our first
So
opening day.
you damn near Kentucky might be the one dang state outside of like Minnesota and Michigan that has a worse gun. I say worse, like a bigger gun season than we might have.
Yeah, we
We
have a
typically
stout.
have a 10-day rifle season.
Yeah.
It's usually right in the middle of the rut. Sounds like yours is too.
Yep.
Um, and then of course, Missouri's a 2-buck state too, so there's a little difference there. Like technically, this Saturday I can kill another buck.
Yeah.
Starting this Saturday. But anyway, so you you had your wife out there, got a picture of him last light on muzzleloader, and he made it. And then rifle season rolls around, and what were your thoughts there? Like, just
Man. So like I
crossing
say, we
fingers.
tried. Yeah, we tried to coordinate to like get her up there to hunt, stuff like that, but it just didn't ever work out. I mean, couldn't get
Yeah.
on him, and really he was a ghost all of rifle season anyway. And then ended up getting a picture of him to let me know that he made it through the gun season, which was awesome. Was pumped about that. And then we also have another late muzzleloader season in December.
No damn.
And
Yep.
yeah, and I want to say I think it is a 9 day season. It's either 7 or 9 days. And that season rolled around, and he still made it through that as well. And so, at this point, we kind of had a big cold front last December here that come through, and Kentucky doesn't get many of those just absolute bitter cold fronts, but this one
Right.
was one of those. And I actually, when the front was coming through, I went and bought some alfalfa from a local hay guy that deals with horse people, and I did a bunch of big, like all the feed sites that we had on the farm. I just did a alfalfa bale per feed site, kind of spread it out, and then fed grain. Well, man, it couldn't have worked out any better. Deer hammered it through that snow. The snow lasted for like 5 days, which I know to, anybody out west doesn't sound like shit, but
But for
Kentucky,
us,
that was a big
that's a
deal,
long time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so the deer hammered it, and wouldn't you know it, man, he starts daylighting on that. And so I'm like, man, if I still had a tag, you probably could have killed him late bow season and, into January. But watched him. He was staying on the farm at that point, so I was pumped. I was like, man, he is staying here. Like, he's found something he likes, or this is just his winter home range. But either way, it's working out for me.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward up to like last days of the season into February, this deer did some stuff that I hadn't personally had one do. Um, he was January 21st. I can actually still remember when I got the pictures. There was a little snow on the ground. He was tending a doe and like hardcore fighting other deer on camera at like January 21st through January 26th.
Damn.
And I'm like, what are you doing this late in the year, big cold front, and you're out here acting a fool? So was still kind of worried about him, but he made it through. February rolls around, sheds his antlers on Valentine's Day. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to find these sheds. Me and Jake and another buddy named Aaron walked probably 12 miles that day. And I mean, we're looking for a big set of horns.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I'll be
Absolutely
dang.
nothing. Still have no clue where they are. And
Makes you wonder.
yeah,
That happens all the time too. You makes you wonder, where the
yeah,
hell did you put these things? Yeah.
yes. Especially once like this year rolled around and I kind of honed in more on his summertime and like where he was late winter and where he was early summer. It was still super surprising because like, man, we walked everything, like how I talked about he had 60 beds. We walked all of them,
Yeah.
and still
Yep.
just found nothing. And so it was kind of a bummer there, but we knew he had made it. We knew he'd shed, and he was just a super big bodied deer, so it was kind of one of those when he walked in on a pile late season, which we can only feed until the last day of February, I believe it is. And
Okay.
so once that was over, stuff kind of quit showing up on camera, and I was kind of turning more into like turkey hunting prep anyway. So,
Yeah.
he made it, got a game plan. We're going to try to hunt him next year. So this year rolled around, and the last day of turkey season for me is like, that's kind of like a holiday. I'll go out and I'll put all my deer cameras up that Sunday of the last turkey season. And that's kind of when I start getting ready for, all right, it's deer season again, so we got to
The
get
brain
ready.
changes. Yeah. The brain
Yeah,
changes
for sure.
modes.
Just a flip.
Yep.
And I got the first pictures of him from this year. It was June 6th was when it was. And he was already, wide beamed out, which you've seen the pictures of him go straight out and kind of wraps around. He was already at that point, so you knew it was him, but you didn't really know what he was going to make at that point.
Yeah. At that point, you're
Um,
just like, okay, he's gonna be big again. He's
yep, for
healthy.
sure.
It's
Yep.
obvious he's healthy. And then all this, I'll tell you, I've dealt with this more times in my life than I want to admit. And so the first thing you think is, oh, this is going to be a great deer.
Yep.
Please God, don't ruin this rack and then get injured. My
Yep.
brother-in-law killed a monster of a deer. He killed it, 6 years ago now, I think. His nickname was River Monster. Halfway through the growing season, he damaged his right side and ended up just
Yep.
having this club hanging off. And if that thing would have made it, it would have been this really awesome like fist, but it rotted
Yep.
off. And he broke off 20 inches minimum
Yep.
that year. He still died because he was still a beast of a deer, but you get so damn mad at them when they do something stupid
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. So like your first thought is he's going to be huge.
Yep.
Please God, don't ruin this. Like how often do you think about that? Is that something that you thought about at all, or you're just like, hey, I'm along for the ride, whatever happens, happens. But
Well,
have you
I
ever
was
dealt with deer doing that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I actually had a really really awesome double beam deer. I guess it's probably been 5 years ago now. The dude was probably a mainframe 10, probably a mid 50s deer, but he had like a 17-inch beam that just come out dead center, wrapped around, was gorgeous. Just followed the beam perfect. It was, you couldn't have drew it up any better if you tried.
Yeah.
And he broke it off like first week of bow season.
Of
Like
course.
straight up
Yeah.
snapped it off at the base and was like, what the crap, man? Like, what are you doing? But with this deer, it was more of like, I'm just thrilled he's alive. I know he's probably going to be big, but let's see what he actually makes.
Yeah,
With him, the biggest scare was with his frame and how big he was like, man, don't get like busted out of a field and like break it off on a tree or something. Because I mean,
exactly.
he really
Yeah,
was like that big a frame to where he could have damaged it pretty easy.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
they know how big it is because you've seen them
Oh
like
yeah.
go around a fence or whatever. But yeah, when they're running through something, getting scared,
Yep.
farmer drives through a field and they take off or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, that's when they're in velvet, it's just so delicate that
Yep.
that the whole time you're just like, please let this stay where it is. But yeah,
And man, I will say he was very smart about that. Like he avoided standing corn at all costs. Like that was his worst enemy, man. He just absolutely hated it. But the real like turning point for this season was like the holy crap moment was July 4th. I got some pictures of him that day that I'll never forget when I first got him. It was like this deer really is going to be a mega giant. Like there's no doubt about it. He could stop growing right now and is going to be the biggest frame deer I've ever killed. Just one of those nuts. And I mean, I killed a 189 in 22 and thought that that was going to be the biggest frame deer that I ever killed. And man, this like his frame was stupid. If he was a 10 or 12, he'd be 200 plus. And
wow,
just I was like, wow, man, this deer is gonna be. And I mean, like we talked about the curse of the velvet picture there earlier. He's balled up at that time, so every tine on him looks like it's a baseball bat.
yeah,
Just crazy.
this thing's gonna be
And
400 inches.
yeah, there you go. But he really did. I mean, he looked. It was just insane. And I had 4 or 5 close buddies that I sent those pictures to, and I was like, man, he's back, and he's gonna be something just insane. And so uh, so I had him in June, had him in July, but there was about a month gap in between the pictures of him. And I'm like, man, where is this deer actually living at? Like, I need to find this summertime range. I need to learn more about this deer. And so, back to where we talked about picking up the farm next door, got lucky and got on it and ended up August 4th. So, exactly a month later,
Hmm.
I was glassing this field and I got to see him in person for the first time ever. Like, mind you, no, besides the 2 years ago, but that was like, this is him in his rack, first time ever I get to see you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
finally
Yeah.
lay eyes on like the final product. Because last year was just that early season turkey hunt. Like he's still balled up, just beams and frames, and
Right.
this
Yep.
was seeing like him as a whole, and it was just one of those,
And you
my
knew that
goodness.
that was a deer that you were gonna try to kill. Like, when you
Oh,
saw him at the last second of turkey season, it was like, damn, look at that.
yeah,
This is a different
yeah,
situation. Now you've known this deer for a while,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, there he is. And by August
yeah,
4th, they're pretty much they're telling you what they're gonna look like at that point.
yeah. And with him, so he still had, the big bull at the end of the tines at that
Hmm.
point, so it made him look a little bit bigger, but he was in a
Getting those text messages. Oh, you're good. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you're good.
okay. And anyway, he come out of a bedding area that
I still got you. Oh, yeah, don't worry
I
about it, man.
what they call. But anyway, he come out of this bedding area, and I got to watch him. Was quite a ways away, but I got to glass him, and man, it was one of those like nothing I've ever seen moments. Like, uh, it's hard to even put in perspective because just how big his frame actually was at that
Right.
time. I mean, it was nuts, and I actually ended up getting pictures of him on a bait site that I'd set up. It was a corn pile not 400 yards from where he was bedding at, and got lucky, got him on camera that night, and man, just that was like the full development velvet pictures, and I was like, goodness gracious, man, like this deer is something special. And like I say, you've always got those like close buddies you send stuff to, and
Yep.
I sent it to him, and it was kind of one of those. Maybe even I was a little bit off to like actually how big he was, and just it was nuts. So we're pumped going into this season. Um, get pictures of him about every night after that. And so I'm pumped. Like this
That's
deer is
nice.
liking what he's seeing, but I don't have a stand on the spot yet. And so he would take these big north wind walks. Every night that there was a north wind in the summer, he would take a big walk and I would get him on the other farm. And then he would come back. Well, the next night, I've got my book here with every date of everything in him. And I'd have to look at it there, but I think it was August. I think it was August 10th. He took a big north wind walk, and I told Luke, one of my best friends, he worked for me for a long time, but he's one of my best friends. I said, we need to get in there and hang that stand today. Like, he's out of the area. I know he's not
he's
right in
not here
there.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, let's go in and let's hang this stand. So went in, hung the stand, get him back on camera that night, and within 4 frames, he picks that stand out. Like, just instantly, head up, looks at it, studies it for a while. And I was like, man, he's slick. He knew he was nowhere close to us and knew that we were in there.
Yeah.
And so, the month of August goes on, and I'm still getting some some of the velvet pictures I've got of this deer are just like, they'll blow your mind. I mean, it's nuts. And so I'm pumped. I'm not confident, but I'm like, probability I'm gonna see this deer opening weekend. Like, gonna lay eyes like up close
I
on him.
mean, I got a better chance than anybody else does, right? Like he's here,
Yeah.
so the confidence
Well,
level is at least what it could be.
yeah, and I mean, I was positive. Plus, just getting an opportunity at him. And my buddy Jake, he was always like, "Well, every time you sit in the tree, you got a 50-50 chance of killing him." And he said that's a whole lot more than a lot of people can say. And I
That's
was like,
exactly
"Well, you're
right.
right about that." So, went in super hopeful. I mean, man, I was pumped. Well, then start looking at the wind forecast, and we don't get northeast winds in September. Like, never happens.
Yeah.
Well, the whole first week of September and second week is like north and east based winds. And I'm like, are you kidding me, man? Like, this stand's hung for a south southwest, what's going on? And so there was a road that he liked to use that come up through that bean field. It was in between beans and corn. It was just a little
A
grass
farm
road.
road, a tractor road. Yeah,
Yeah.
not an
Yeah.
actual road. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a road through the farm. And anyway, he would just use this road, and by the time, a lot of times when he got to the corn pile, it was already dark. Like, he couldn't, it might only be 20 minutes after dark, but it was normally after dark minus 1 or 2 days a week. Right. So that road was looking like my best option at that time, just because I had at least 2 to 3 nights a week pictures of him daylighting on that road going to the spot. So I told Luke, I was like, man, I said, I think I'm going to go in and hang a stand on that road. And there's this little clump of pine trees, man. It's 5 trees in the middle of just nothing, but it's right on that road. And I was like, I can get a stand in there. And Luke, he was pretty confident about it. He's like, you're going to kill him opening week on that road. And I was like, he's a lot more confident than I am. I was like, man, I'll be lucky
So
to see
he's
it.
a positive friend, is what you're saying. He's a
Yeah.
good friend from a positivity standpoint.
Oh, yeah. Him and Jake both from day one. Luke said I was going to kill him in September, and Jake said if I didn't kill him in September, I'd kill him late season. But they were both just like super positive, you got to stay up, whatever. And so Luke couldn't help that weekend. It was actually my anniversary weekend. So I went in and hung that stand late in August, and got that pine tree stand in. It was beautiful, man. I was like, after sitting in it, I was like, man, there is a chance that I could kill this deer right here. And I said, I kind of thought to myself, wouldn't that be a wild story? I mean, Bo kill a deer out in the middle of just nothing, like no bait, no nothing, just walking a road. And was pretty confident about it. So opening weekend rolls around, which last year it actually fell on the 7th because September 1st was on a Sunday.
Oh,
so we kind of
wait. Okay.
Yeah, I had to wait and man, I'm getting pictures. I've got, 2 or 3 daylight pictures that week, and I'm like, man, if, our season would have just started last week, this deer could be dead. So I thought. He ended up being much smarter than I ever dreamed he would be. But so opening night, I didn't have the wind to hunt the corn pile, so I hunted that road. And I actually kind of made a deal with myself to say that, 2 to 3 nights a week he daylights on this road. If I have the right wind and I don't get busted going in or out, if I sit in this stand for 7 days, I should kill him.
One of those
And
days he should show up.
he should show up. And most likely, what was weird about it, and I can show you on the calendar, he liked to daylight on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Very rarely was it after that in the week. And so I was feeling pretty good about it. And opening night, I sat down. Wind was good for the spot. I had a little bit of a suspicion that he was up at the top of the hill, kind of across the beans from me, just from the camera pictures of him the night before. Kind of was like, yeah, he looked like he left that way, so he might be at the top of this hill. But either way, got a pretty good chance of seeing him. And at the beginning of the season, I was actually taking like little videos of myself because I had it in my mind, like, man, if I kill this deer, I want to document some things. And I
Yeah.
have like the first like 10 days of season, I just videoed like a little 3-minute video of myself every time and just would, like kind of do a, this is what we saw, this is how it's going type thing. And I had never done that with a deer before in my life, but this deer was special. And I sat down, made my video, and I was like, man, I really think he's going to be bedded up at the top of this hill across from me. And sure enough, at 7:15, which funny thing about that, there was a bunch of funny things about this deer.
Looking
So that
back on it
pine set,
now, right? Yeah.
yeah. Um, so at that pine set that I told you that I hung, it was covered very, very well. I mean, pine tree, limbs below you, limbs above you, you're hid very well.
Mm.
But for like 10 minutes a day, from the top of that hill being the only place you could see into that pine tree just because it's above you, for like 10 minutes a day, when the sun was coming down, you were highlighted.
Right.
And I mean, no more, no less, like literally 10 minutes. 7:15 just happened to be in that 10 minutes, and that deer stood up in that exact point of the fence row that you could see into that pine, and he looked dead at me. And I was like, well, maybe that was just like sheer coincidence. Like he just looked down this way, whatever. So I pull up my binoculars and I'm like, yeah, it's him. And I'm just kind of gawking. And I'm like, man, I want to send a video to Luke and Jake. So I slide my binos back down in my harness, get my phone out, and I look back up. He's gone. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding? Like, how does he just disappear? I mean, his rack's
Right.
taller than the beans, and he's got to walk 200 yards each way for me to lose him. Lost him, man. Still to this day, like after
Don't
killing him and
know, like,
everything,
what did he do? Yeah.
the only thing I can think of was because so later that night, he ends up walking basically to the base of the tree. But only thing I can think was he bedded down in a sprayer track in the beans and literally just laid there until it got dark because we were only like 280 yards apart. And so go the rest of the night, don't see him, but I'm like, hey, got to see him. I'm pumped. Let my bow
Mm-hmm.
down. It's like 8:40. Let my bow down, feet get on the ground, and I walk out of that little patch of pines and look, you still got a good moonlight where you're out, not in the trees. He's standing at 60 yards walking into that patch of pines. So I lose it, man. I'm like, well, this is over. I just bumped him first night of the season. This deer's gone forever. I go on, slip out so he doesn't see me,
So yeah,
get back
so
to,
was he walking? So he was walking your way,
yeah, yeah. So the
and
way
so
it,
so what did you do? Did you just like try to slip off, or did you just
yeah.
stay
No,
put for a minute?
nope. I walked out of there just like I'd never even saw the deer. I straight walked out the road back to it, which it was quite a ways out of there, but walked like I never saw him. I just wanted to get out of there as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, calling buddies like, man, I bumped this deer. Like it's gonna be over. I'm in the dumps, just mad at myself. And later that night, cell cams, great tool, but also can get you your feelings hurt too. I get a picture of him walking dead under that tree, going back towards the corn pile. And then later that night, he was on the corn pile for like 40 minutes. And so I was
Hmm.
like, all right, he's still comfortable, like we're still in this. Great. Go in the next night, don't see him, end up seeing another one of the older deer on the farm. I actually want to get my wife on this year. Um, but end up seeing him, have great encounter with him, walks right up the road, just as pretty as you could have drew it up. Get down, I'm walking back towards the truck. not thinking anything of it. And I hear what sounds like, you know, when you just grab a limb and you rip the leaves off of it,
Yeah.
that sound that it makes. I heard that. And I'm like, what is that? And I just look over, and there he is, silhouetted as pretty as could be at like 40, 50 yards. And he's just eating on this bush. He had bedded on the access that I used the night before and waited for me to walk back out the next night. And I was like, and at this time, I'm like looking back now, like at this time, I'm just thinking, like, how unlucky is that? I'm not thinking like he's playing me at that point because it's only 2 days in the season. I'm like, man, how unlucky is that? So I once again just walk out there. I just get the hell out. I'm trying not to bust him out, and I don't get any pictures of him that night. And so I'm like, yep, here it is. I finally bumped this deer. It's game over. Whatever. He stays gone for I want to say it was 2 days that time, and then he pops back up like nothing ever happened. Back on a corn pile. Just I'm like, all right, good. I go in and hunt. Have a good encounter that same week with a 150, 160 class deer,
Yep.
super good deer. Um, have that encounter, everything goes
By the
smooth.
way, way to practice discipline there.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that's difficult. You're like,
yeah,
man, I want to do this.
no, he was a killer deer. I got an awesome video of him just like absolutely grabbing an ear of corn off a stalk and just ripping the whole stalk down. It's pretty
Hmm.
cool. Had him at like 20 yards for quite a while. But anyway, don't see Mega anymore that night or anymore that week. I finally took the first day off. I think I hunted 9 days straight. It was one of those like, yeah, man, maybe I did bump him. Maybe he
Hmm.
knows more than I think he does. And so I decided that I'm going to switch accesses. I had been kind of burning up this one access. You know what? I'm going to switch accesses. I've got more than one way to get to this stand. I'm going to see what happens. Um, I switch accesses, and that very first night, a couple hours after I leave, he shows up on that access that I used. And so I'm like, well, what a coincidence, man. He was down there. I wasn't even in the game. Didn't really think about it. So the next night, I used the same access. He shows up on it again a couple hours after I leave. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to switch it up. This can't be luck. I go back to the original access. He shows up on that a couple hours after I leave. So then I'm like, all right, I'm going to throw a curveball. It's going to be like a 1.5 mile walk, but I'm going to do this big walk because he's obviously in this area. I'm going to do this big long walk around and come in from a way he'll never suspect. I'll be damned if he didn't show up on that access a couple hours after I left.
It's like
So this
he's
dude,
following you.
oh, dude, he knew every time that I like. He lived in this 30, 40 acre area, and he knew it better than anybody that walked the face of this earth. I mean, he
It's
just
his,
knew that area.
it's his
And
house. It's his home.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it'd be like me coming to hunt you in your house.
yeah,
Who's going to have the advantage, me or you?
yep,
You know, I mean, it's if you think about it, and I someone told me that years ago. I mean, it is their house. It's like saying
it is.
it's like moving their couch 6 feet to the left and expecting them not to notice.
Yep,
If I came into your living room and moved your couch, you're going to notice. It's the same
yep.
thing, and they know that like the back of their hand. That's all they know. And yeah, that's so interesting to see that stuff happen too.
And man, so this whole time I'm having encounters with other great deer, and so like these other deer aren't paying attention to it. It's literally just him. Like he
Hmm.
knows that this is what's going on. And so I'm like, all right, maybe I should give this deer more credit. And so I don't think I took a full week off, but I think I took 5 days off hunting. I'm like, man, I need a break. This deer needs a break. Like, let's see what pictures tell us through this week and just go from there. Well, he didn't start getting spotty until literally it was almost like he knew the calendar had switched to October 1st.
Hmm.
Um, but he stayed in there, but was pretty well predominantly nighttime, so wasn't really seeing a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't working out the way that I was hoping for. I was starting like this was the first like, yeah, I'm kind of getting discouraged. October rolls around, he leaves, and then comes back on the 5th with a broken brow tine. And so I'm like, what the heck, man? We were talking about deer breaking stuff off.
You
And,
dickhead.
yep. And I mean, his brow was thick as crap, man. I have no clue how he didn't break, or how he broke it off and didn't break something else. I mean, his drop tine's that little piddly thing, perfectly fine, but breaks
Yeah.
a brow tine that's as thick as your thumb off.
Right.
So get that night of pictures of him, disappears again, is gone for 13 days. And I'm like, and mind you, I'm hunting this whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, where's he at? Did he die? What's going on? He comes back, pops in for a night. I'd have to look on the exact date, but then leaves again. And so while he's gone, I decide to do this. It was meant to be a hanging hunt, but I got in there and I liked the spot so much. I was like, yeah, this is a great spot. Like, this could be it, really.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I wasn't a huge fan of was it was in the middle of standing corn, and I knew he hated walking standing corn, but I was hoping it would funnel him into this creek bottom.
Yeah.
And so as time went on, I got in there. I really liked the spot, and the first night in there, saw a ton of deer. Bucks that I hadn't seen in literally like week or two, had
Right.
not seen them. And they showed up. One in particular, we called him Chayton's deer because it was a good buddy of mine from Nebraska come in to hunt. It's a 6-year-old deer, probably doesn't go 120, but he looks like he weighs 320. Like, I mean, he is just a bull of a deer.
Looks like his rack doesn't belong on his body type of deer.
Yes, straight up. And he walks in, man, one night. It was the third night I think I hunted that stand. Thrashing trees, working scrapes in front of me, just a great hunt. So I'm pumped up, like, man, they're starting to feel it. Hopefully Mega comes back. Well, he doesn't. All the way up until literally November 1st. So up until November 1st, he had been gone another 15 days. No pictures, no sightings, no nothing. Just straight up hunting a ghost. And I go, because our trick-or-treating got pushed back that night. It got pushed back from Thursday to Friday because of rain. I didn't hunt, went trick-or-treating, and I get a picture that night at like 9:50, 9:54 or something like that. It's him working a scrape, and he's like in the middle of the farm. So I'm like, damn, man, he made it past a whole lot of cameras to get to that point, to where he's at. And I was like, I was pretty impressed. So end up getting him on that scrape and then on a corn pile not too far up the creek from there. And was like, you know what, man, he's still in the farm. I hadn't hunted a morning. I'm like, I'm going in the morning. I'm hunting this deer. And got in super early. All the corn was still wet, so it was like the perfect walk in, man. It was like walking past silk. You like made no noise, got in super quiet. Yeah. Oh man, it was like, I was like, man, there was something about this morning. I was like, man, it could legit happen this morning. And I got in that same stand because that was kind of his entry and exit to the farm. Like when he would leave the farm, that's kind of where he went. And so I was pumped. Got in there, was in there probably an hour before daylight. When daylight rolled around, it was after probably 10, 15 minutes after daylight, I was getting my phone out to text my wife just to let her know, like, hey, everything was good. I just didn't want to open my phone in the dark. And I see a trail cam notification. I open it up. This deer's 300 yards up the creek from me. And I'm like, whoa, like, man, this could legit happen. So the rest of the hunt, I couldn't hunt that long that morning because my kids had a soccer game. And so I'm sitting there just this whole time, my head just looking at this one spot, like, man, he could come walking up through here anytime. And you just start playing like those fantasies in your head, like, what if he walks here? What if he walks there?
Come right here. I'm going to pull. Yeah.
Exactly. You start you're thinking of like everything but what actually ends up happening. You're like, oh, if he walks there, I could stand up, get this shot, whatever. And so time rolls around for me to leave for the soccer game. I leave my bow in the tree, binos, horns, everything, man. Everything but my safety harness stayed in that tree. I climbed down and basically ran to my side-by-side. Came to the house, got to soccer. It was their last games for the season, both my boys. Fisher ended up winning his game, so we were pumped. We went and had lunch. And our lunch was kind of late. We didn't honestly start eating until probably 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
We got home. Got the kids kind of settled in, and about 3 o'clock, I headed back. Finally got in the stand, probably 3:30, 3:50. Got everything
Now,
kind of got my mind.
is this already after daylight savings?
No, it was the day before.
The
It
day
was literally
before.
the
Okay.
one day
Yeah.
before. Yep. And so at that time, for us, we're Eastern time. You're looking at about 3.5 hours till dark.
Yeah.
But it's what I had to work with.
Hmm.
And so get in, get everything put back on, and the whole time I'm just kind of studying those pictures from this morning, like what was the last frame? Where did he leave? Where did he look like his body was turning to? And then you start thinking like, man, did he leave while I was at soccer? Like did he already slip out? Is he already gone? And to be honest with you, the night, as good as it felt, was kind of slow. Did not see a deer until like right at like 5:50, 6 o'clock ish. Around that time, I look up the creek and I see this little 6 pointer, and he's following that creek, and you can hear him real good. The leaves had already dried up, and I was like, that's kind of good because chances are he won't sneak in on me.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought anyway. Sit there, watch this 6 pointer, man. He ends up walking right by, and he walks through the same lane that I end up killing Mega in. It's 8 yards. Walks dead under the tree. I was like, oh man, I could have smoked that deer. If Mega does the same thing, it's perfect.
Right.
Well, about 6:10, I start hearing these footsteps, and I'm like, we start counting cadence, and I'm like, that's definitely a deer, like
Dut, dut,
110%.
dut.
Yep,
Yep. Yep.
exactly. I was like 110% for sure. So I'm in the tree just gawking because there's a pretty big split tree in between me and the rest of the creek. And I'm looking around it, can't see a deer. Look behind it, can't see a deer. I'm like, what is this thing? Like, is it invisible or like, what's going on?
Where's the damn?
And
Let me start
finally,
looking for this squirrel that's ruining it for me.
exactly. And it
Yep.
had got to that point where, like, man, I know damn good and well this is not a squirrel, but I cannot see this deer. And so
Right.
finally, I just say, hell with it. I lean way back in the tree and get around that tree. Dude, he's standing at like 10, 12 yards. It's him. I can see the two kickers off of the G3 on that side. And I'm holy shit, this is Mega. Like, he's right here.
Yeah.
And so I instantly, man, I go up, I grab my bow off the hanger, and I go to start standing up because I'm right-handed and it's on the offhand side. So
Yep.
I've got to get turned around. Soon as I get like locked out, stood up, I look at his left beam and he just pitches up and looks straight up at me. And I'm like,
Oh
well, it's
no.
over. Like, yeah, this is done. It's game over. Whatever. It's all over. And at this point, like I had already convinced myself just half a second that quick that like this hunt's over. For some reason, I just went ahead and clipped on my release and turned the rest of the way around because we had that tree in between us. He didn't bust, and I'm like, holy shit, man, he's still standing here. I was like, all I need is these 2 steps, man, just 2 steps, and it's game over. Well, man, you want to talk about blessed? The deer takes 1 step forward, and then he takes another step and quarters away. So I've got this like beautiful 1/4 and 2 shot.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm there.
Okay. And I've got this just beautiful, beautiful 1/4 and 2 shot. And he's standing in this creek bottom. And so I immediately draw. And soon as the bow like locks back, you know how Matthew's got like a super aggressive cam, he got that big lockout.
Yep.
He heard that and instantly just snaps his head up and looks back at me. But you can see for like the first time ever, you see it a lot in coyote calling, like, when you wolf one and he stops and it's like, oh shit, man, I messed up. Like he caught me slipping.
Yep.
That was the look that was on this deer's face. Like instant just look like, man, he caught me slipping.
I done
And
messed
I
up.
shoot. Yeah, I shoot, and it's just instant. Arrow blows through him. Like, you couldn't have asked for just better shot, which 8 yards, you'd hope so. But when there's a 190-inch deer standing there, it's a different story.
Yep.
Especially when, this is sit 35 for the year. Like, all my heart and soul and every bit of energy that I had was this deer all year. And he runs up the creek bank and runs through a log jam that you never would have dreamed this deer could have ran through. And I hear him crash in the edge of the corn, and you see the corn kind of move over and everything. And I hear him gasp, but I'm like, there's no way he's dead that quick. Well, then I see like 5 corn stalks moving. I'm like, man, he got back up or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see it kind of settle down. I'm like, man, there's no way he ran through that cornfield and it didn't make noise, you know?
Right.
And so I just, at this point, I'm bawling. Like, this was the most emotional hunt, man. I'm absolutely like, everything is out of me. I'm bawling, crying. My first call was my wife. She lucky to understand what I said. I just said, get the kids and, get up here. Like, I shot him. I shot him. And then I called Luke and I called Jake. And both of them, I mean, I'm still like legit bawling at this point. Like, I could not control it. And I get both of them called, and I told Luke, I was like, get up here. I'm going to need your help. And so he ends up meeting up. Him and his girlfriend met up with my wife to help get the kids in the truck. And they all show up at the same time. And we go and start tracking him because I was like, man, I swear he sounded like he fell up here, but I want to track just to make sure,
Yeah.
We literally pop out of the creek bank, get through that log jam I was telling you about, and he's piled up right there at the edge of the corn, man. He didn't run 30 yards. And like it was all that emotion from before just came over me again. Like I held him for the first time, and it was one of those. Honestly, after all the stuff that happened in September, I never dreamed that I would ever get to sit behind that
Lay
deer.
your
Like
hands on them. Yeah.
yeah, man, I really thought like this deer was gonna beat me. Like for sure, like he's gonna win, no doubt about it. And I
It's
guess at some point,
it's an interesting, sorry to cut you off, man. It's an
oh,
interesting
you're good.
feeling, right? Like I feel like,
Yeah,
you know, there's people listening to our show who hunt public land who, don't see, deer,
right.
don't know deer. There's some people that don't, I've done both ways. I've been after deer for a few years, and I don't mean to say this way, but I don't know what other way to put it. Once you actually uh put your hands on a deer that you've been after for a few years, and in your case,
Yeah,
2 seasons plus 35 hunts this season,
yeah.
it's almost like you're in love with them. I don't mean it like,
Oh, you are.
in a romantic way, but like you think about that deer as much as you think about your wife, and you think about like what they're doing and what they're thinking and and when
Yep,
you don't ever get to be in contact with that thing ever until that moment happens. And that first
yep.
time that you bend down to grab his antlers, like explain that feeling that, come through you. You obviously were emotional after you shot him, but what was that feeling when you actually touched, you laid hands on Mega Moose for the first time ever?
So, man, it was one of those, like you say, it's an odd feeling. Like, and I mean, that's kind of the way I just like it is one of the oddest feelings ever because it's kind of like relief, happiness, and remorse all just balled into this big one. And
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know if it's almost like the emotional value of it, I guess, would be like finally getting over some type of like horrible grief, I guess you would say. I mean,
Right.
it's because you're right. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to run my own business, but like, man, I've been so foggy brained literally since this whole season started and started hunting. Man, like my work has kind of suffered from it. My, house stuff has suffered from it because I mean, literally every morning the first thing I did was check cell camera pictures and log. I mean, I literally have this calendar right here. It's a
Yep.
one from Dollar Store. I mean, like when October looks like that, it's just no show after no show. You're
Yeah.
just down, and so every aspect of everything is just you start getting these like negative outlooks, and when it finally all just pours out of you, it's like you have nothing left. I mean, it's insane the feeling that you get out of it, and I don't know how to describe it. I don't there's no real good way to describe it other
No,
until you feel that feeling.
the
I
only way
mean,
to
and
like I almost describe it is I think you hit the nail on the head with that getting over grief, because if you think about, at least I have had deer that I have chased that I did not end up killing after a few
yeah,
seasons. There was a deer named Sub-Zero that I nicknamed that I chased him for 3 seasons, and when he finally disappeared and never came back, like I'll never know what happened to him. I'll never know
yeah,
where he died. I'll never know who killed him, if someone did,
yep,
what happened to him, why didn't I kill him? Like that'll never go away. For as long as I live, I'll remember that deer. With
yep.
like a deer like Mega Moose in this situation, the second it's over, it's like I
Yeah, I
can
mean,
get over the failure of not killing him right now because it's over. That I just
yep.
did. And
And
that
I
I
hate
think
using the
you
word
explained it
relief.
perfectly. Yeah, but it kind of is,
Yeah,
because you put so much into it, 35 hunts this year, however much you went after him last year, and it's just like, if this didn't work out, what did I do this for? And and that's when hunting sometimes gets not fun, like you just said. Sometimes you feel like,
it
what am I
does.
doing this for? I'm racking my brain over this. I'm doing things I normally wouldn't do. I'm not eating right. I might be short with my wife at home. My kids, you know, I was short with them, and what am I doing here? Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I totally understand that feeling, and you explained it perfectly. I think is like it's almost like getting over grief all at one time, just right
And
now.
you talk about like the things that your family has to go through. I mean, my wife put up with a whole lot this season. I mean, to even get to go hunt 35 times and have three kids at home that my wife is, having to do everything and pick up my slack, and the guys in the shop having to pick up my slack because I'm just not all there at that time. And people have talked about before, like killing big deer, you'll have people try to like church you up a little bit about it, like, man, you nailed that hunt or whatever, or you called that. And like that 189 I killed in 22, it was one of my nieces. There was a birthday dinner for him that night, and I told my wife, I was like, look, I'm going to hunt this deer. I'm going to kill this deer tonight. But like, yeah, I looked like the hero because I killed that 189 that night. But if I'd have went in there and it was a blank stand, you just look like an asshole because you missed a
Because you missed a
important
birthday
family event.
party. Yeah, yeah.
And so, there's a whole lot of, and I don't recommend it to anybody. I mean, to be honest with you, chasing big deer is kind of, it's the best and worst thing you'll ever do. I mean, because you forego a lot of very important stuff,
You
like for
almost
sure. I
act
mean,
like a drug addict. Like I've
yeah,
never
you
been
do.
addicted to meth or anything like that, but the way they act is kind of like a deer hunter acts when he's after something big. It's
Yeah,
like stuff
I
don't
mean,
matter to me. I ain't gonna take care of myself. I'm not gonna bathe. I just want to be in the woods and try to kill this thing.
well, and that's what I've told people before, man. It was just like, you know, if somebody could have come along and, I mean, with this deer in particular, for sure, somebody could have come along and been like, look, you got to be in the shop for a couple weeks, but here's $100,000 job. You're going to make it in 2 weeks. I would have said, no, I'm going to hunt this deer. Like, it mattered that much to me, which is stupid. Like,
Yeah,
things
for
that
sure.
could benefit my family way more. But like you say, it was literally like an addiction, man. That's all that mattered at that time was just this chase. And
Yeah.
like I say, I try to tell myself that I'm going to have these, like I told you about last year, going to have these fun seasons and stuff like that, and then do stuff like this. And to be honest with you, man, it weighs on me a lot. I think about things like that a whole lot, especially after like now he's dead, and I think about like, man, there was probably a whole lot of shit you missed because of this deer.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's great. I mean, there was 100 people show up at my shop that night that I killed him, man. And everybody was smiles, but nobody understood what it took up to that point except for a small handful of guys. And I
Yeah.
will say though, I want to take a step back there. I had more support on this deer than I've ever had in my entire life. The 10 people that knew about him, I was getting texts from other people. Have you seen him yet? Have you got him? I mean, like, genuinely, not just because, like, they were curious or whatever, like, genuinely, people cared about me killing this deer. And I've
Right.
never had that in my life. And that was a rewarding feeling because I mean to tell you right now that when I killed him and Luke and Jake come up there and saw him in the field, like Luke especially, just like the look on their face, like it meant as much to them as it did to me. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it mattered to
It's a
them.
collective group effort almost. It's
Yeah,
I mean,
dude,
obviously they
Luke
didn't
was
kill the
there.
deer, but that feeling is, once again, it's why we hunt. Those feelings, that
Yeah,
feeling of you know finally getting them, your buddies, Luke and Jake, getting to experience it with you. I mean,
yeah,
you might not know about it, but me and Micah were after a big deer last year, 180-inch deer, and I saw that deer on the hoof. I wasn't able to shoot him. He could have been dead that day. 3 days later, Micah kills him, and it
yeah,
was like we both did it. I mean,
Yep.
jumped up, big hugs, like just can't believe what you just did. And
Yep.
unless you got a group of friends and a group of people that experience this stuff with, it's hard to even explain what that means. But
Yep.
it's pretty awesome. So no, I totally get it. They were just as excited for you as you were for yourself. But so I always have you. I'm going to have you explain Mega Moose because I want when we do these Tales of the Chase episodes, I want the animal to get the credit it deserves by explaining what he looks
Yeah.
like outside of the pictures we're going to show. But before, I want to ask
Yeah.
you a question. So when you first saw him and he looked up at you in the tree before he looked at you right at the last second before he got an arrow, what do you
Right.
think made him not bust out right there? Do you think he didn't actually see you, maybe like he was looking and didn't see you directly and just kind of ignored it? What do you think happened right there? Because that is so interesting to me that he didn't just tear off that first time he looked up.
So, man, to be honest with you, that's going to be only one thing, and there's one creature on this earth that knows, and it's him.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it could have been the curiosity factor. It could have been the damn, I realized I messed up, but there's no real good way to get out of here.
So I'm just gonna,
Yeah, it could have been like, or I mean, you don't even think about it, but like, what if it was cockiness? Like, nah, I didn't slip up. Like I'm good.
yeah,
I haven't smelt anybody. There's nothing here. I'm good. That was just something moving. Because that was the only stand that he didn't find that I
ah,
hung. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
and so maybe it was something that caught him off guard. And like I say, I think a lot of times in like animals, curiosity gets the better of a lot of really
yeah.
smart animals. Um, but I definitely know it wasn't the like yeah, I'm ready to go type thing, because if you could have saw the demeanor change from first look to the look when I was at full draw, two
Well,
totally different animals.
that's kind of what I was thinking. Like in my mind, the first look up was like, hey, oh, nah, that's not okay. I'm good. I'm good. Nothing
Yeah.
got me. And then the
Yeah.
second look was like, shit, that
Yep.
was something. I'm done. I'm in trouble. Like
Yep.
I should have got him first.
And
I can picture those two looks, right now,
yeah.
just the way you explained them.
I mean, like, face just loses all emotion. It's just like, damn. And, like, like, I mean, it would be no different than somebody chasing you, and, like, it's finally, like, there's no way out. And it's like, damn, man,
Got
this is
me.
it. Like, it's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
And, so that was, but as far as the deer, man, there was
Yeah.
one of
So
those, like,
explain his rack to the listener that is trying to understand what he is. They're never going to see a picture of him. That they're
well,
going to, but pretend like you're trying to tell your
so,
grandpa over the phone 20 years ago about this deer. What did he look
so
like, when you laid hands on him?
So he, first off, body wise, super huge body deer. I mean, he's one of those. He's long legged. Like, he was actually a deer that stood tall, which was
Mm-hmm.
weird. But when you saw him walk through a bean field, he was like visually taller than the other deer walking through the bean field. But as far as rack goes, he was a big stubby nosed deer, and he had a huge head, but you couldn't tell because, I mean, his rack was stupid big, so you
Mm-hmm.
couldn't tell that his face was literally wider than your hand. Like, I mean, he was a huge
Big deer.
deer, just a giant animal. But as far as it goes, I guess the easiest way to reference him would just be measurements. His inside spread's 23 inches, so he's super wide deer. And he's got a 29 and an eighth beam and a 30 and an eighth beam. So just insane. I've never seen a deer with 30-inch beams, let alone kill one. Um, his strong side, his 2 and his 3 are both over 12 inches. His weak side is a 10 and 11. He's a mainframe 9. And if he still had his brow tine, he would have went round 195. But his mainframe 8-point frame is like 184. So I mean,
Golly.
it's stupid, like, numbers wise. But actually, well, hold on, I've got him right here.
Oh, you got the rack with you.
Yeah, man, I couldn't leave it at taxidermist.
I know that's the worst. That's the worst part about taxidermy. Ooh wee.
But that's him. He's like I say, that's his stronger side there. And I know it doesn't look like it, but both times are over 12. And then the big thing about him was his mass measurements. His mass measurements, there's not a single one on his head under 5. So they're
Wow.
all like 5 6/8, 5 7/8. I mean, he's damn near, he's right up there 45, 50 inches of mass. And he uh,
Good.
he was
What
just,
a
he's, he's everything,
Oh,
man. I mean,
he's got a bob hole. I just saw that.
yeah, he's got two. Actually, he's got one in the front of the beam and then one in the side of the beam.
Those are cool.
And to be honest with you, we talk about things that happen to deer where he had the kicker last year, but he was a straight 10 with short fours. And where he had this shorter four, I really do believe that in early development that this was a four. And then when the holes got in, it drooped. And that's why, because he never had a drop tine.
Yeah,
And so I believe that that's how that happened. And
that's
if you could
interesting.
see like how his beam kind of like sags right there,
Yep.
I really do think that that was meant to be the four, and it just fell.
Yeah,
But,
that is so dang cool. Man, that
but
is a
yeah, man,
gorgeous deer.
that's him.
And he's
And
got a
like,
pretty dark rack.
yeah,
From you know,
so that was another thing.
I'm watching it on YouTube with our show for the listener, and I'm looking at it. And so if you're on YouTube, you can look at it with me. But he for a deer that seemed to live out in the open, kinda,
Yeah.
his rack is dark. At least what I can tell, on this video.
No, it's super dark. I mean, and you can even compare him to like the deer behind me and stuff like
Yeah,
that. I mean, if you want to say like typical Kentucky deer that I see, I mean, that's your rack color, like a real light tannish, whitish colored rack.
yeah.
And that was honestly the first kind of thing because believe it or not, the night I shot him was the first night I ever saw him hard horned.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and so that
And
was
that crab
that was
claw
a
right
big
there,
deal.
goodness gracious. I call that a
Yeah,
crab claw there, and that looks
yeah,
literally like a dang crab. I mean, wow.
yeah. And he's got his beam on top of that crab claw is almost flat, like you can set a water bottle on it.
That's
So
cool.
he's got a lot of. I mean, he's got everything you could want in a whitetail, man. Like he's got it. But
He does.
and I mean, I don't say that braggingly. Like he's just a insane deer.
Well, it's just the facts. It's not like we're bragging here. It is what he is. I mean, he's just beautiful. So
Yeah.
that is
No,
awesome.
but man, I don't know. Just I hope nobody ever has to work um, or worry as much as I did about this deer. Hopefully, it doesn't bother that many people that much. But it was, man. This season was definitely mentally wise. I mean, it was a tough season. Time wise was one thing, but like I said, I'm fortunate. Owning my shop helps with that a lot. And like I
Sure.
say, probably shouldn't be putting deer hunting in front of that many important things, but I did, and I continue to do. It's just, man, it's my passion. It's what I care about. I'm not one of those money guys. Like I could give a damn less if I'm the richest guy in the room, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got, I've got so many memories in the field, man. Just stuff that I've gotten to do. Um, and I'm sitting here talking like I'm an old guy. I'm 33, but like I think about like all the just absolutely amazing hunts that I've got to go on, whether it be coyote hunts, turkey hunts, deer hunts. I mean,
Yeah.
I can still take you, especially any of my big deer that I've killed. I can take you back to where their feet were when they were
Yeah.
standing when I shot them. I can tell you every detail about the hunt. I can tell you where they died at. I can tell you I remember all that stuff, Man, I can't remember trucks I worked on 6 months ago.
No,
And
we were
it's
just
just
talking about this last night. We recorded a show, another Tales of the Chase show that come out a week before yours,
yeah.
and it's two younger little boys, 12 and 10 years old, that shot the
Yeah.
same buck 2 years apart. So the one little brother
Okay.
didn't kill this buck the one year, and then the other brother killed him the next season.
That's
And we
pretty
were
cool.
talking, yeah, it is, and we were talking about the mount, getting the deer mounted, and we get deer mounted, not because of, the rack. I mean, yeah, the racks are beautiful, but it's the story that every
Yeah.
time you look at that mount, every time you look at that deer behind you, and every time you look at Mega Moose when he gets done,
Yep.
You go right back to that day. You go right back to those 35 hunts,
Yep.
and it's like there's just a bunch of stories on our walls. It's not a bragging thing. It's these stories that come from, these deers, and you're doing the deer justice by, doing something like that instead of throwing it in your
Yeah.
shed and, doing that sort of stuff. So no,
Yeah.
it's an awesome story, man. You told it well. I, I actually thought I knew a lot about the story from listening to your show with John, and man, just the detail you got in was just so awesome that, I was right there with the listener, hearing some of the stuff for the first time. So I couldn't be happier for you. I don't know you very well, but you sound like a great guy, and just couldn't have happened to someone better, from what I've been told about you, and hope to get to know you a little more too. And man, it's just, what a great freaking deer. And, your year has been topped at this point, and, the rest is
Oh
just
yeah.
icing on the cake.
Yeah, that's what actually I talked to our buddy Corey yesterday, and that's one thing I said was he had reposted the thing about Mega there yesterday, and I kind of said on there, I was like, man, if we have any kind of calling season like we have deer season, I said we'll be doing pretty good. And
Yeah.
but like you said, man, nothing matters past this point. I mean, it could be an absolute crap calling season, and my year's
Don't
been
care.
made. Like
Yep.
yeah, every ounce of my energy. To be honest, like this week has been nothing. I mean, well, last week was just nothing but recovery, man. It was still like you're still in awe, but you're getting so many calls and texts from people and people wanting to come see it. I mean,
Yep.
dude, I didn't hardly get anything done last week with people coming in the shop to see him. And, it made you feel good, but at the same time, I mean, it's exhausting and it's finally like I say, I hate using the word relief, but I'm relieved that that hunt is behind me. It's one of those things like you wish you could relive it a million times over, but if I had to do a million of those seasons, man, I would die. Like it would literally kill me.
Yeah.
And so,
You'd be a single man after about 5 years.
yeah,
And yeah, I get it.
yeah, dude, I've got the best wife in the world. Like, I can't even pretend. Like, any time that I've even ever been mad at her, like, I can't pretend that she isn't amazing. I mean, we have three, and I'm not talking about older kids, man. We've got a 7, a 4, and a 1.
Yeah.
And the 7 and 4-year-old fight like it's just going out of style, man. And she put up with my shit all year. I mean,
Yep.
from early season prep to literally hunting the month of September. I mean, she put up with it all. I mean,
Yep.
and she would encourage too. It wasn't just like oh, you're going hunting again, or oh, you're leaving the shop early to go hunt. Like it was, I hope tonight goes well, or I hope this works out for you, or I hope you at least get some type of something out of it. And I would come home in some of the worst moods, man. Just absolutely, just
Yeah.
kind of a piece of shit, to be honest with you. Like, it's kind of hindsight now because I'm getting to hold him, but like it was one of those like I actually ended up making a Facebook post about my wife the night that I killed him, which was odd enough. But um, I was kind of sitting there, kind of thinking to myself, like, what kind of piece of shit are you, man, to be like disappointed that you're in the tree hunting a deer this big? Like, how can you even be upset that you're here right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was kind of like a reality check, like, man, get your shit together because you're hunting an amazing deer on an amazing farm and you got to walk into the tree today and do this. Like you left your shop to go do this, and your kids and wife are at home, and she is pushing you to do this. Like how lucky you actually are.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
was kind of the check that I needed.
That's a good point. I mean, all of us go through it at some point in our hunting careers, whether we're chasing one specific animal, which, most of the guys I know have done that, including myself,
Yeah.
and it can be taxing. And then you have those moments where you're like, man, I'm being negative as shit. And I tend to, and you can ask, Micah and Andy weren't able to make it today, but I tend to be a negative hunter. Like when things
Yeah.
don't go my way, I speak negatively to myself. I speak negatively to people
Yep.
about the hunting. And sometimes you're going to be like, you just got to be like, well, what are you doing this for then? Like, if this
Yep.
isn't fun, find a new hobby, bro. But it's not the case. It's just the way we deal with stress. I think the way
Yep.
the cards play for us. That's how we handle that moment, right? And that you do
Yep.
get those moments. Micah's a great friend and brother-in-law for me to be able to bounce stuff off of and say,
Yeah.
dude, it ain't that big a deal because he doesn't wear any of those emotions. He just lets them go and
Yep.
moves on to the next. And I need that. And he probably needs a little bit of me to kick him in the ass every once in a while and say, what are you doing? Get your shit together, or whatever. So,
Right. No,
no,
definitely.
I agree with you. Your wife knows you better than you know yourself probably. And that's what you needed in those moments was to get going. And how's it going? And, same thing with your buddies, man. But,
Yep.
Gage, I can't say congratulations enough. That's an amazing deer. We've had some big deer on this show. And that's, one of the biggest and, one of the coolest, if not the coolest story I've listened to so far. Although I got Corey coming soon, so we'll see how that one goes.
That's a hell of a story there.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's
dude,
amazing.
it is. I'm excited for it, and couldn't happen to a better person either. So,
Yeah.
dude, congratulations on an amazing Kentucky buck, and good luck to your wife if she can get out there and get something this season as well, and
Yeah, I
everybody
really
else
hope so.
out there. So, Gage Bohannon, man, I appreciate you coming on, dude.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me.